My mom teamed up with her stepson to steal from my inheritance, so I quietly collected evidence and took them to court where their lies fell apart. I used to believe that blood was thicker than water, until the day I discovered that my own mother had been teaching her stepson how to step on me so he could climb higher. My name is Evelyn Monroe, I'm 26 years old, and I work as a financial analyst at one of the largest insurance companies in the city. For years I thought I was doing the right thing by supporting my mother financially after my father passed away. I never imagined that my kindness would become the very weapon she'd use against me. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way she'd get nervous whenever I asked direct questions about money. The way Jason would disappear upstairs whenever I came to visit, only to reappear later with some expensive new gadget he claimed he'd found a great deal on. The way my mother's eyes would dart away from mine when she thanked me for the money I gave her each month. I thought she was just embarrassed about needing help. I never considered that she might be embarrassed about lying to me. It all started 3 years ago when Mom married David, a man who seemed decent enough but came with significant baggage in the form of his 22-year-old son Jason. David worked construction when his back wasn't acting up, and Jason was supposedly between jobs, though his definition of looking for work seemed to involve a lot of video games and very few job applications. Still, they seemed to make my mother happy after years of loneliness following my father's death, so I tried to be supportive. David died in a car accident just 8 months after the wedding, leaving Mom with Jason and a mountain of debt that included medical bills, car payments, and credit card balances that David had apparently hidden from everyone. The life insurance policy was smaller than expected, and suddenly my mother was facing the very real possibility of losing the house she'd lived in for 20 years. Being the dutiful daughter, I stepped in to help. I started by paying off the most urgent debts, the car payment so she wouldn't lose transportation, the medical bills that were threatening to go to collections, and the mortgage payment that was already 2 months behind. Then I set up a monthly transfer of $1,200 to help with ongoing expenses like groceries, utilities, and household maintenance. I also gave Mom an additional allowance of $300 each month so she could maintain some dignity while applying for social services and disability benefits. Jason was supposedly looking for work, though I rarely saw any evidence of that effort. Whenever I asked about his job search, Mom would get defensive and change the subject. He's trying his best, she'd say. The job market is tough for young people. I bit my tongue because I didn't want to cause problems, but privately I wondered why a healthy 22-year-old couldn't find work at a restaurant or retail store while he looked for something better. The first sign something was wrong came about 6 months ago, though at the time I dismissed it as my own paranoia. I'd noticed small things missing from my childhood bedroom whenever I visited Mom's house. Nothing dramatic at first. A silver bracelet here, a perfume bottle there, maybe a scarf I hadn't seen in a while. When I asked Mom about them, she'd give me this confused look and say something like, "Honey, are you sure you left it here? Maybe you forgot it at your apartment." I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe grief was making me forgetful. Or maybe I was just misremembering where I'd left things. But the items that went missing weren't random. They were always small, valuable, and easily portable. A gold necklace that had belonged to my aunt. A watch my father had given me for graduation. A pair of diamond earrings I'd received as a bonus from work. Each time something disappeared, I'd spend hours searching through my apartment, convinced I must have brought it home and forgotten. Each time, I'd come up empty-handed and feel a little more confused. The turning point came when my grandmother's diamond ring disappeared. That ring was the one thing my father specifically asked me to keep safe before he died. It had been passed down through 3 generations of women in our family, from my great-grandmother to my grandmother to my mother, and it was supposed to be mine someday. The ring itself was beautiful, a 2-carat diamond in an antique setting with smaller diamonds along the band, but its sentimental value was immeasurable. My father had told me stories about how my great-grandfather had saved for months to buy it, how my grandmother had hidden it during the war, how my mother had worn it on her wedding day. I kept it in a small velvet jewelry box in my old dresser, thinking it would be safer at Mom's house than in my downtown apartment where break-ins weren't uncommon. I'd check on it periodically, just to make sure it was still there, and it always was, until the Sunday when it wasn't. "Mom, where's Grandma's ring?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even though my heart was racing. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, then alarm, then something that looked almost like guilt before settling back into confusion. "What ring, sweetheart? You know exactly what ring." "The diamond ring Dad asked me to keep safe." "Grandma's ring." "Oh, that old thing. I think I might have moved it somewhere safer, with all the work being done on the house lately." She trailed off, looking around the kitchen as if the ring might materialize on the counter. This was news to me. "What work? I haven't seen any contractors here." "Oh, just some minor repairs. Jason's been helping me fix some things around the house. Maybe I moved the ring when we were working in your old room. Let me look around." But she never found it, and every time I brought it up over the next few weeks, she had a different story. First, she'd moved it to her safety deposit box for security. Then she couldn't remember which box she'd put it in. Or maybe she'd given it to her sister for safekeeping. Finally, she suggested that maybe I'd already taken it home and forgotten, which was impossible because I'd specifically checked on it just 2 weeks earlier. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't forgetful. Someone had taken my ring, and my mother's increasingly elaborate explanations only confirmed my suspicions. That's when I decided to set up a small security camera in my old bedroom. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was paranoid and probably wrong about everything. But something deep in my gut kept screaming that I needed to know the truth. I bought a tiny wireless camera online, the kind advertised for monitoring pets or checking on elderly relatives, and hid it behind some books on the shelf, positioned to give me a clear view of the dresser and jewelry box. I waited 2 weeks before checking the footage, partly because I was busy with work, and partly because I was terrified of what I might find. When I finally sat down to review the recordings, scrolling through hours of empty room footage, I almost convinced myself that I was wrong about everything. Then I saw it. There was Jason, sneaking into my room at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night, moving carefully in the darkness with the practiced stealth of someone who'd done this before. He went straight to the dresser, opened the jewelry box, and began sorting through its contents with the efficiency of a professional thief. He pocketed several items, but what made my blood run cold was what happened next. My mother appeared in the doorway. She didn't look surprised to see him there. She didn't demand to know what he was doing or tell him to put everything back. Instead, she stood in the hallway, keeping watch while her stepson robbed her own daughter. When Jason emerged from my room with a small bag of my belongings, she whispered something to him, and they both crept back down the hallway together like co-conspirators in the night. My own mother was not just enabling this theft, she was actively participating in it. I sat in my apartment at 3 a.m, staring at that footage and feeling like my entire world had shifted on its axis. I watched the clip over and over again, hoping I was misinterpreting what I was seeing, hoping there was some innocent explanation that would make this nightmare make sense. But there wasn't. The woman who gave birth to me, who claimed to love me, who accepted my money every month with tears of gratitude in her eyes, had been betraying me in the most fundamental way possible. The betrayal wasn't just about the theft, though that was devastating enough. It was about the lie we'd been living for months. Every time I'd asked about missing items, she'd looked me in the eye and lied. Every time I doubted my own memory, she'd encouraged that doubt. Every time I'd felt guilty for suspecting Jason, she'd reinforced that guilt by defending him and making me feel small for being suspicious. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't eat the next day. I called in sick to work because I couldn't concentrate on anything except the security footage playing over and over in my mind. I kept thinking about every interaction we'd had over the past few months, and suddenly all the weird moments made perfect sense. The way she'd rush to change the subject when I asked about Jason's job search. The way she'd quickly close her purse whenever I walked into a room, as if she was hiding something. The way Jason would smirk at me when she wasn't looking, like he knew some secret I didn't. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was just the walking ATM who would never catch on to their scheme. I decided to confront them. But first I wanted more evidence. I needed to know the full scope of what they'd been doing. And I suspected the theft went far beyond what I'd captured on that single night. I installed additional cameras in the living room and kitchen, and I started paying much closer attention to their behavior during my visits. I also began taking inventory of everything in my old room, photographing items and making detailed lists so I could track what disappeared. What I discovered over the next month made me physically sick. Jason wasn't just stealing my jewelry. He was systematically looting anything of value from my childhood room. He'd taken my father's vintage watch collection, some rare coins that had been a gift from my grandfather, and even some designer clothes I'd left in the closet from college. But it wasn't random theft. He was researching the value of items online before taking them, focusing on things that were small, valuable, and unlikely to be missed immediately. The most heartbreaking discovery was watching him go through my old photo albums, carefully removing pictures that had sentimental value, family photos, pictures of my father, childhood memories that couldn't be replaced. He wasn't selling these, he was just taking them, destroying pieces of my history for no reason other than cruelty. But the part that absolutely destroyed me was watching my mother actively participate in the operation. She wasn't just keeping watch, she was helping plan the thefts. She would distract me with conversation while Jason went upstairs, or she'd suggest we go for a walk right after I'd mentioned bringing something valuable to store in my old room. She'd create opportunities for him to steal from me, then comfort me when I was upset about missing items. They had turned robbing me into a coordinated effort, a family business built on betraying the person who was keeping them afloat financially. The final straw came when I decided to test them with some bait. I casually mentioned during a Sunday dinner that I was thinking about storing some of my father's rare book collection at Mom's house because my apartment was getting too crowded. I made sure to mention that some of the books were first editions worth thousands of dollars each. I could see Jason's eyes light up with greed, and Mom immediately began asking detailed questions about which books I was planning to bring and when. That night, the cameras caught them researching the value of rare books online, with Mom sitting next to Jason and helping him figure out which titles would be easiest to sell. They were already planning to steal books I hadn't even brought over yet. I couldn't take it anymore. I had enough evidence to bury them both, and I was done being their victim. I showed up at Mom's house on a Tuesday evening, unannounced and armed with printed screenshots from the security footage. Jason was sprawled on the couch playing video games while Mom was in the kitchen making dinner, and the normalcy of the scene made me want to scream. How could they sit there acting like a normal family when they'd been systematically robbing me for months? "We need to talk," I said, sitting down at the kitchen table with my folder of evidence. Mom looked nervous immediately, which told me she knew exactly why I was there. "Of course, honey. What's wrong? You look upset." Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot from the security footage. A crystal clear image of Jason holding my grandmother's ring while she stood in the background keeping watch. The silence in that kitchen was deafening. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of Jason's video game, and the rapid breathing of a woman who'd just been caught red-handed. "I can explain," she started, but I held up my hand to stop her. "No, you can't explain this. There's no explanation for this, Mom. You've been helping him steal from me for months." Jason must have heard our voices because he wandered into the kitchen, and when he saw the image on my phone, his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, defiance, and finally a kind of sneering arrogance that made me want to slap him. "So what?" he said, crossing his arms. "You've got plenty of money, you live in some fancy apartment downtown while we're stuck in this dump. What's a few pieces of jewelry to someone like you?" The casual dismissal of my belongings, my inheritance, my father's memory, it was like a slap in the face. "Those weren't your things to take," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You left them here," Mom said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "You haven't lived here in years." Jason thought they were just abandoned. Jason thought what? That he could steal from your daughter and you'd help him do it? That's when she said the words that shattered whatever was left of my heart and any illusion I had about our relationship. "He's my son too, Evelyn. He needs help, and you have so much. Would it really have killed you to share?" Share. She wanted me to share my grandmother's ring, the last gift from my father, the photographs of my childhood, the coins my grandfather had collected. She wanted me to just hand over pieces of my soul to her thieving stepson, because he needed help, and I was supposedly too selfish to give it willingly. I stood up from that table, and I felt something fundamental break inside me, not just my heart, something deeper and more essential. The part of me that believed family meant something sacred. The part that thought love was unconditional and trust was unbreakable. The part that had faith in the woman who raised me. "I want everything back," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Every single thing he took from me. Every piece of jewelry, every photograph, every item that belonged to Dad. All of it. We don't have it anymore," Jason said with a shrug, as if he was discussing the weather. "Sold most of it months ago." "Then you're going to buy it back?" All of it. With what money? Mom asked, and there was something almost whining in her voice that made me sick. I don't care, figure it out. Get a job, take out a loan, sell your own belongings. I want everything back, or I'm calling the police. That's when Jason made his biggest mistake. He laughed. Actually laughed at me, like I was some kind of joke. What are you gonna do about it, Evelyn? Call the police on your own family? Sue your mommy? Nobody's going to believe you over us. We'll just say you're having some kind of breakdown from work stress. The arrogance in his voice, the casual cruelty, the assumption that I would just roll over and take it, it crystallized something inside me. I looked at both of them. This woman who gave birth to me and this man-child she'd chosen over her own daughter. And I realized something important. They weren't my family. Family doesn't steal from you. Family doesn't lie to your face while picking your pockets. Family doesn't gaslight you into thinking you're crazy when you notice things going missing. You know what? You're absolutely right, Jason. I'm not going to call the police on family. I could see them both relax slightly, thinking they'd won. But I am going to call them on thieves. The relief vanished from their faces so quickly it would have been comical if I wasn't so heartbroken. I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911 right there in front of them. Hello, I need to report a theft. I have video evidence of 2 people stealing from my home. Evelyn, wait. Mom jumped up from her chair, reaching for my phone. Please, don't do this. We can work something out. No, we can't, I said, stepping away from her. You made your choice when you decided to steal from me. You made your choice when you lied to my face for months. You made your choice when you told me I should be happy to share my inheritance with a thief. The 911 operator was asking for details, and I gave them everything. The address, the nature of the theft, the fact that I had video evidence. Jason started pacing around the kitchen like a caged animal, and Mom was crying, but I felt nothing but cold determination. I left that house while they were still begging me to reconsider, and I drove straight to the police station. I filed a comprehensive report for theft, providing them with all the security footage I'd collected, serial numbers for the stolen items where I had them, and a detailed list of everything that had been taken. The officer taking my statement looked uncomfortable when I explained that the thieves were my mother and stepbrother, but he assured me they'd investigate fully and that video evidence made the case very strong. But calling the police was just the beginning of my plan. I had been thinking about this for weeks, and I knew exactly how to make them understand the full consequences of their actions. See, while I'd been playing detective with the security cameras, I'd also been doing some research into Mom's finances. I knew every penny I'd given her over the past 3 years, and I had kept meticulous records because I'd been treating it as a loan that might someday be forgiven. But I'd also been curious about her other sources of income, particularly the government benefits she was receiving. That's when I discovered she'd been committing welfare fraud. Mom had been collecting food stamps, housing assistance, and disability benefits while failing to report the $1,500 per month I'd been giving her. She'd also failed to report that Jason was living in the house and contributing to expenses with money from selling my stolen belongings. According to the government, she was a single woman with no income and no support system, barely surviving on her disability payments. In reality, she was receiving over $3,000 per month in combined assistance from me and various government programs, plus whatever Jason was bringing in from selling my stolen property. She was living quite comfortably while committing multiple forms of fraud. I spent the next week gathering every bank statement, every receipt, every record of financial support I'd provided. I calculated that over the past 3 years I'd given her more than $60,000 in direct support, not counting the times I'd paid for groceries, utilities, emergency car repairs, medical copays, and other expenses. I had documentation for all of it: bank transfers, canceled checks, receipts, text messages where she thanked me for the help. Then I called the social services fraud hotline. The woman who took my call was sympathetic but thorough. She explained that benefit fraud was taken very seriously, and that they would need to conduct a full investigation. I provided them with copies of all my financial records, the police report number for the theft case, and a detailed timeline of the support I'd been providing. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, Mom received a letter informing her that her benefits were under review and would be suspended immediately pending a full audit of her financial situation. The letter also mentioned that providing false information to federal agencies carried serious legal penalties. including potential criminal charges and the requirement to repay all fraudulently obtained benefits. She called me crying, which was ironic considering she'd been stealing from me for months. "Evelyn, baby, please. They're going to take away my food stamps, my housing assistance. The letter says I might have to pay back everything I've received for the past 3 years. I don't know what I'm going to do. You should have thought about that before you decided to steal from me and lie to the government," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "It wasn't my idea." "Jason needed the money for what, Mom? Drugs, gambling, video games? What exactly was so important that you were willing to destroy your relationship with your daughter for it?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You made your choice," I continued. "You chose him over me. You chose to steal from me rather than ask for help. You chose to lie to the government rather than be honest about your situation. Now you get to live with the consequences of those choices. Please, honey, I'm your mother. I made mistakes, but I'm still your mother." "No," I said, and the certainty in my voice surprised even me. "A mother protects her children. A mother doesn't feed them to wolves. You stopped being my mother the day you helped Jason steal my grandmother's ring." I hung up and immediately blocked her phone number. But Mom wasn't done fighting. She was desperate now, facing the loss of her benefits, potential criminal charges, and the very real possibility of losing her house when she couldn't make the mortgage payments without my support. 3 days after our phone call, she showed up at my office building. I was coming back from lunch when I saw her sitting in the lobby, looking frail and defeated. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes that made her look older than her 50 years. Part of me, the part that still remembered being a little girl who thought her mommy could fix anything, wanted to run to her and make everything okay. But I didn't. Instead, I walked right past her toward the elevator, hoping she wouldn't see me. She did. "Evelyn, please, just 5 minutes." I turned around, and the look on her face almost broke my resolve. She looked broken, desperate, and so much smaller than the woman who used to seem invincible to me. But then I thought about the security footage, about watching her keep lookout while Jason robbed me, about the months of lies and gaslighting. "You have nothing to say that I want to hear. Jason's in jail," she said quietly. I stopped walking. "What? Jason? He was arrested 3 days ago, drug possession with intent to distribute. They found a lot when they searched the house." I felt a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction that he was finally facing consequences, vindication that my suspicions about his drug use had been correct, and a strange sort of sadness that this was what my mother had chosen to protect. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Not sorry that he was arrested, but sorry that she was hurting. "I have no one now," she whispered. "No income, no support. The mortgage company is starting foreclosure proceedings. I'm going to lose the house, Evelyn. The house where you grew up. You have me," I said. "You've always had me. But you chose him instead. I can't undo what happened." "No, you can't. But you could have chosen differently at any point over the past few months. Even after I confronted you with the evidence, you could have apologized. You could have tried to make things right. Instead, you defended him. You told me I should have been happy to share my inheritance with a thief." She started crying then, right there in the lobby of my office building. Other people were staring, and I felt embarrassed and angry and heartbroken all at the same time. "I was wrong," she said. "I know I was wrong. But please, Evelyn, I'm your mother. Doesn't that count for something?" It did count for something. It counted for years of bedtime stories and birthday parties and scraped knees kissed better. It counted for the woman who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and held me when I cried about my first heartbreak. It counted for Christmas mornings and birthday surprises and the million small kindnesses that make up a childhood. But it also counted for betrayal. It counted for lies. It counted for choosing a thief over her own daughter. It counted for months of gaslighting and manipulation. It counted for helping someone steal the last precious reminders I had of my father. "Being my mother means you should have protected me," I said, "not fed me to the wolves." I walked away and left her crying in that lobby, surrounded by strangers who pretended not to notice her breakdown. That was 8 months ago. I haven't spoken to her since. The police investigation moved forward despite Mom's desperate attempts to have the charges dropped. Jason had confessed to the theft as part of a plea deal on the drug charges, providing a detailed list of everything he'd stolen and sold. The total value was over $25,000, far more than I'd initially estimated. Most of it was never recovered because he'd sold everything immediately to fund his drug habit and gambling addiction. Jason was sentenced to 3 years in state prison, 2 years for the drug charges, and an additional year for the theft. He was also ordered to pay restitution, though the judge made it clear that given his lack of assets and employment history, I shouldn't expect to see much of that money. Mom's legal troubles were more complex. The welfare fraud investigation revealed that she'd been receiving fraudulent benefits for nearly 4 years, totaling over $40,000. She was given the option of paying back the money and accepting probation, or facing criminal prosecution. Since she had no way to pay back $40,000, she ultimately pled guilty to welfare fraud and was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of probation during which she had to make monthly payments toward the restitution. She lost her benefits, her housing assistance, and eventually the house when she couldn't make the mortgage payments. I heard through a cousin that she was living in a studio apartment in a rough part of town and working at a grocery store, trying to rebuild her life at 50 years old. Part of me feels guilty about that. Part of me wonders if I went too far, if I should have found some way to help her without enabling her behavior. Part of me misses the mother I thought I had, even though I now know she never really existed. But then I remember that security footage. I remember her face when I confronted them. Not shocked, not apologetic, but defensive and angry that I'd discovered their scheme. She wasn't sorry she'd helped him steal from me. She was just sorry they got caught. I've started seeing a therapist to work through the betrayal, the guilt, and the complex grief of losing a parent who's still alive. Dr. Martinez has helped me understand that what I'm mourning isn't just the loss of my mother, but the loss of the illusion that my mother was someone she never really was. The woman I thought raised me. The one who taught me about honesty and integrity and standing up for what's right. She wouldn't have helped someone steal from her own daughter. The real woman who raised me was someone who could watch her child be robbed and think that was acceptable, as long as it benefited her stepson. Someone who could lie to my face for months while accepting my financial support. Someone who could prioritize a drug addict's wants over her own daughter's well-being. I'm learning to be okay with that truth, even though it hurts more than I ever imagined it could. My life is better now in ways I didn't expect. I have more money every month because I'm not supporting Mom's lifestyle and Jason's drug habit. I sleep better because I'm not constantly worrying about whether she's okay or wondering what's going to go missing next from my childhood room. I've started dating again, and I'm building genuine friendships with people who actually care about me rather than what I can do for them. I bought myself a new ring to replace my grandmother's. Not the same style, because that ring was irreplaceable, but something beautiful that represents my new beginning and my commitment to protecting myself. Every time I look at it, I remember that I chose to stand up for myself when no one else would. I've also completely redecorated my apartment, getting rid of anything that reminded me of my old life and filling the space with things that make me happy. I have plants now, and artwork that I chose because I love it, not because it matches what I thought my mother would approve of. I've discovered that I actually prefer modern furniture to the traditional pieces I grew up with, and I like bright colors instead of the muted tones that filled my childhood home. Sometimes I wonder if Mom thinks about me, if she misses me, if she ever lies awake at night wishing she'd made different choices. I hope she does, honestly. Not because I want her to suffer, but because I want her to understand what she lost when she chose Jason over me. I hope she realizes that she didn't just lose a daughter. She lost someone who would have done anything for her. Someone who loved her unconditionally and trusted her completely. Someone who saw her as a hero and wanted nothing more than to take care of her for the rest of her life. She traded all of that for a drug addict who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. Someone who was willing to steal from her own daughter and let her take the blame when they got caught. I hope it was worth it. But even if she does realize what she's lost, it's too late now. I've learned something important about myself over these past months. I deserve better than people who see my love as a weakness to exploit. I deserve better than family members who think my kindness makes me a target. I deserve better than relationships built on lies and manipulation. I deserve better than a mother who would rather watch me be robbed than risk upsetting her stepson. Last month I got a letter from Mom. She didn't send it to my apartment. She probably doesn't know my new address since I moved after everything happened, but somehow got it to me through my workplace. I stared at that envelope for 3 days before opening it, and when I finally did, I found a single sheet of paper with just 4 words written in her familiar handwriting. I'm sorry. please forgive. I read those words over and over, looking for something more. Some acknowledgement of what she'd actually done. Some recognition of the pain she'd caused. Some understanding of why her actions were so deeply wrong. Some promise that she'd changed. That she understood the difference between being sorry you got caught and being sorry for what you did. But there was nothing else. Just 4 words that felt more like a demand than an apology. I threw the letter away. Forgiveness isn't something you can demand from someone you've betrayed. It's not a debt that gets automatically paid just because you say you're sorry. Forgiveness is a gift, and it has to be earned through genuine remorse, changed behavior, and time. She hasn't earned it. Maybe someday she will. Maybe someday she'll send me a letter that actually acknowledges what she did and why it was wrong. Maybe someday she'll demonstrate through her actions that she's become the kind of person who would never betray her child's trust. Maybe someday I'll be in a place where I can consider forgiving her. But I'm not holding my breath. I've learned that family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes family is the people who choose to love you without conditions, who support you without expecting anything in return, who celebrate your successes and comfort you. During failures without keeping score, I've learned that the people who truly love you will never ask you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. I've learned that saying no to people who want to use you isn't selfish, it's survival. Most importantly, I've learned that I don't need anyone's permission to protect myself from people who want to hurt me, even if those people happen to be related to me. My name is Evelyn Monroe, I'm 26 years old, and I used to believe that blood was thicker than water. Now I know that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. I've chosen my family now, and it includes my therapist who helps me heal, my coworkers who've become genuine friends, my neighbor who waters my plants when I travel, and the barista at my local coffee shop who always remembers my order and asks about my day. It doesn't include people who think love means accepting abuse, or people who believe that being related to you gives them the right to steal from you. I sleep well at night knowing that no one can steal from me anymore, not my possessions, not my peace of mind, and definitely not my self-respect. And that's worth more than any relationship built on obligation, guilt, and the false belief that family members deserve unconditional loyalty regardless of how they treat you. I learned that real family doesn't make you question your worth. They remind you of it every single day. Real family doesn't take advantage of your generosity. They appreciate it and reciprocate when they can. Real family doesn't lie to you, steal from you, or ask you to sacrifice your well-being for their convenience. Real family loves you enough to be honest with you, even when the truth is difficult. I'm still building that kind of family, one genuine relationship at a time. And for the first time in years, I'm genuinely excited about my future instead of constantly worried about other people's problems. That's what freedom feels like.